Let's continue with the next video. Now that we have already tested the save and load game, let's start by adding some weapons to the character, right? So I have already imported a couple of weapons here. We have a long axe and a short axe that matches the animation that we already have here, and SM stands from static mesh. This is a naming convention I borrowed from Unreal Engine, and it allowed me to know right away that this asset does not have any rig. Either way, let's go through the configuration. So this is what you will have by just importing an FBX into Unity. And here in the rig section, we need to remove the animation type. I don't want to strip any bone because there is any. Click apply. There is no animation, so import none. Apply, and then for materials, let's also do none here. So I want to show you something that made me spend a lot of time doing an export and import from Blender to Unity for several minutes or almost hours. So I have this asset I modified in Blender in order to have the pivot in the right place in the handle. So both weapons have the same pivot, which allow me then to use just one equipment viewer and modify the position of this equipment viewer to the right place for both weapons. But again, if I were to now drag this FBX like this one into the scene, you will see that Unity is rotating the asset for me. So let me just focus select it. There we go. And let's move it maybe, or let's just, and you can see here it is pointing to the wrong position. It should be looking forward in the Z axis. So after spending too much time trying to figure out what was going on, I found in internet, I start searching, and actually the issue is here in the import settings. So what you want to do, of course, we know we don't want this asset doesn't have any blend shape, no visibility from Blender, no cameras, no lights, and I don't care about the sort hierarchy by name because there is no hierarchy. But importantly, so let me click apply, and now the magic checkbox, bake axis conversion. So check on that one, click apply, and voila. Now we have the proper axis from Blender. So let's do the same thing. So let me prove it out. Let's drag this thing into the scene, and now it's looking towards the Z axis. And by the way, you can see here this is the pivot that I modified in Blender. And if you for any chance I believe that Unity by default will have this selection, the toggle tool handle position to center. And if you are getting crazy why this is not in the pivot that you created, you just need to select and change this to pivot. Okay, so let me delete this from the scene, and let's do the same for the long axe. So bake axis conversion, let's remove all this stuff. This is not a rig mesh, we don't need animations, and also let's not import the material by default. There we go. So now we have both weapons. We can at this point create a shared material for both assets. So let's go into our folder structure. We have a materials folder, and let's create a weapons folder, and from here let's add a new material. So let's call this one M for material, and axe weapon. And let's change the albedo to, I don't know, yellow. Why not? There we go. So now that we have our weapon, I mean the mesh itself, we need to create the weapon for ORK Framework. In order to do that, we are going to create a new empty game object, and let's call this one small. Was it a small or short? Now I'm not sure. Short, yeah, short. So let's do short axe. Let's reset the transform, and we want the mesh or the model to be child of this game object. So let's just drag the model like so. And here in the materials we can assign our material that we created before. There we go. And let me get rid of this Unity editor error. Okay, now we need to add to this game object, the parent short axe, a damage dealer. So we can either go to Gameslove Machinum Scene Wizard, and by having selected the game object we can go to Add Component and search for Damage Dealer, and we need to choose the Damage Dealer 3D. There we go. So it will add for us a rigid body and a box collider, and here we can go to the box collider itself and start playing with it or change its configuration in order to have the affected box in the tip of the axe. So let's, for example, drag like so. Stretch it out. Yeah, to give some room, maybe not from behind, but in the tip of the axe, something like that. Okay. So now that we have the box collider, we can safely create a prefab out of this weapon. So let's go to the project hierarchy, and we have our prefabs folder. So here we could create under characters, or no, maybe outside. Let's do a new folder and create weapons. And let's drag our short axe inside this weapon folder. Now we have our prefab, so we can safely remove it from this scene hierarchy. Okay, so behind the scenes I already created a second prefab for the long axe, just following the same steps as before. So we have the damage dealer, box collider, rigid body, and as a child of the game object, our model. So now it's time to create the weapons in ORK Framework. So let's open up the ORK editor. And the first thing we need to do is go to the Templates tab, and here in the Equipment Slot Sets templates, let's take the default template and change its name to Weapon. This template or this slot is going to be equipable in the weapon slot that we already have in the inventory section. So this is all what we need to do here for now. So click Save. I mean in the template section. If we now jump into the inventory tab and then select equipment slot, we see that we have weapon, shield, armor, helmet, shoes, accessories. Just make sure that in the weapon slot, if we go to the base settings, you have the allow on equip checked. Contribute, we are not going to use it, but or maybe we do, but at least for now, for the time being, make sure that we have allow on equipped. The next step is go to the equipment section and add a new entry. Click on edit in the old section, or if we choose the content information category, we can select here and change the name, and let's select short axe. Click OK. Jump into the item settings, and here in the item type we have the default one created when we installed ORK Framework, so we need to create a new category here, or item type. So we can do it from this side, like clicking this plus icon and then selecting the navigate to these data settings, and here we can change the text to weapons and click OK. Now let's go back to the equipment, and we have the weapons item type selected. Let's scroll down, and we have here the prefab settings, and we need to add our prefab that we created before in the viewer, in the equipment viewer prefab, viewer prefab. So let's select the short axe and add it to the viewer prefab slot. For this item, we don't need to add a custom schematic, at least not for the time being. This was just for the helmet before. If you remember, we are using a modular character, and in this case the equipment viewer will not work with that type of characters. Okay, so let's move on. For the time being, we can skip the UI settings. We are going to add icons and weapon images later on when we started configuring the UI for the whole game. So for now, jump into the equipment settings, and here is where we apply the template that we created before. So if you scroll down, and so we can see here equipment slot set 0. So here we choose the slot set type to template and weapon. This will help us to reuse any configuration for all the weapons on the right hand that we added later on. So at this point we can save our settings and duplicate this short axe to create now the long axe. So click on copy, go to the content information and edit text, and let's rename this guy to long axe. And in the item settings we need to change the prefab for the equipment viewer, like so. Save the settings and we can continue. To debug, we could at this moment go to the combatants section, combatants, select the player and then select inventory and equipment, and we could add the short axe to the start equipment. So let's click in this one, add equipment slot, and from here which slot we want to add. It will be the weapon, so which weapon to add in this slot? We can add the short axe. So let's save the settings, and we can now close the ORK editor for the time being. Let's go now to the prefab of the player open the prefab in edit mode, and we need to search in the mesh model hierarchy, the skeleton hierarchy, the right hand. So in this case it will be here in the armor hips. Then we have spine, spine 2, spine 3. Let's select the right shoulder, right arm, and finally we have the right hand. This character asset already has a game object to set the weapon slot, but I would like to handle it myself. So let's create another empty game object at this location, create empty, and let's rename this one to right underscore hand underscore weapon underscore socket. So now we need to add to this game object an equipment viewer. We could either click on add component and select or choose or find equipment, not new script, there we go, equipment viewer, or via the Machinum scene wizard. So let's select in this case from here equipment viewer. We need then to change in the equipment viewer settings the equipment slot. In this case is going to be the weapon slot. Don't pay attention about the asset source. This is coming from the editor drawing properties. Nothing that we change here will ever change our settings here. This is handled in the ORK editor. And then if we scroll or check here equipment preview, we could actually let us focus select to get closer to the model prefab. So we can select here to preview the prefab. So we need to select which prefab. In this case it will be the short axe, and click preview prefab. And it's not showing anything. Oh yes it is, but the issue is of course that we have all this hierarchy hidden. So let's make it visible. There we go. So now we can start positioning our weapon socket, not the axe clone, the weapon socket, in order to align the weapon properly in the hand of the character. So the numbers I tested before, and it looks working for me, is here we've set to 0.078. In the Y we have minus 0.041, and in the Z we have minus 0.018. Then for the rotation we have in the X 22.05928. Then for the Y we have 241.0504, and in the Z we have 3.396.107, something like that. Okay, now that we are with the socket configuration, we could at this point go back to the equipment viewer, equipment preview, and okay, it already reverted the preview prefab. So we can save our prefab settings. Let's go back to the scene, and since we already have to start with the small axe equipped, we can test it out. So let's increase the game view here and hit play. Okay, let's check it out, how it looks like. More or less. We can still tweak a little bit more the position of the socket, the weapon socket. And rotate a little bit. Yeah, so now we need to, of course, to save the transform, rotation and position that we have here, because as soon as we stop play mode, we will lose these changes. So let's do a copy component. Now we can stop. Let's go to our player prefab, and down below in the right hand weapon socket, now we can paste the component values like so. Save the changes and let's check it out once again. Yeah, it's looking better. Okay, so on the next video, let's start building the, as I mentioned before, the animation set depending of the weapon that we are equipped. So now we have the small axe and we have a long axe, so we are going to have a different animation set that is going to change as soon as we equip the proper weapon. So let's see you on the next video.